IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners. Hi guys, I'm Faiza with my co-host Saif, and our guest travelers today are Shilpa and Nandhini. Shilpa and Nandhini, along with Roomi, are the trio behind the blog Chasing Sunsets. They started off like a group of friends in a movie would, by promising each other that they would meet every year in a foreign land. Since 2013, they have kept this promise, and somewhere along the way, an urge to preserve their memories led to the blog Chasing Sunsets. And voila, 4 years later, they have been featured as India's top travel bloggers, and in this journey, they hope to inspire their readers to jump in and take the leap of faith and travel. In a short span, they have been featured on Holidify's list of top bloggers in India, Outlook Traveler, Ultimate Book of Travel Experience, and are a featured contributor on Womanpreneur.
So, with that introduction, I'd like to welcome the trio behind the blog, Chasing Sunsets, to Musafir Stories. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of the Musafir Stories. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the pleasure is all ours. And just as a heads up, today we have only Shilpa and Nandhini joining us, and Rumi couldn't make it to the talk show. But anyway, we're glad that you two could make it and share your travel experiences with us.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Well, the introduction that I have given about Shilpa, Nandhini, and Rumi is really small. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourself and tell our listeners when the travel bug bit you? So, over to you guys.
Okay, so this is Nandhini, and me and Rumi were friends slash roommates from college times in Trichy. And then I moved to Germany for my master's and Rumi to the US. That's how Rumi and Shilpa got to know each other from Carnegie Mellon. We did a trip together in 2012 to Greece, and that's when we started traveling as a group. And at the end of that trip, we kind of decided why not start blogging our trips and run a travel blog. Wow. And since 2012, we've been doing Chasing Sunsets, and every year we try and do one or two trips together so that it's a good way for friends to catch up. Post Greece, so we did a trip to South Africa and Thailand the last 2 years. So far it's been going good every year, one destination together. And of course we have our individual trips as well, but it's always fun when the three of us get together and get to travel together. And Shilpa, you want to add something?
Yeah, so it's with these guys, somehow, how you always end up planning trip with friends, and towards the time of the trip, everybody slowly backs out.
Right.
But with these two guys, I know if we plan a trip, we know that we're going to make the trip happen. So I always have that confidence, and my personal travel motivation comes from these two.
And I was just saying, 3 is, I think, just the right number. You might say 3 is a crowd, but I think 3 is just the right number, right? That way you don't have too many people, so you run that risk of people dropping out and plans getting cancelled. So yeah, you have a nice little group there.
I totally agree with you on that. Actually, it's more easy when you're on the trip because, everybody's got their morning routines and, when they go to bed, when they wake up, and there's always the lag between the first one who gets ready to the last one who gets ready. So, when the right number, you can really get your day started quite fast, and it's easier to, get things done and planning to happen. It's so much more easier. So even personally, I prefer 3 is a perfect number for a travel group.
That's absolutely true.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit more about the blog. You did mention that you started in 2012, but what's the story behind the name, Chasing Sunsets?
What happened was, in Greece, we rented a car to go to this temple of Poseidon in Athens.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We wanted to catch the sunset in the temple of Poseidon, and we lost our way. We started thinking, and that was our last night in Athens, and we were racing against time to get to the top before the sun actually went down, and we finally did, and that's the reason, Chasing Sunsets, because we just managed to make it to the temple of Poseidon on
time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that is a story.
Wow, that sounds like a
So,
tiny adventure by itself. Yeah.
yeah, so exactly. So that's the name to the blog. And regarding the blog itself, I think so we just started writing, and at that point, I think when we met Nandhini, she had already traveled almost the whole of Europe. She had already 35 countries or something under her
my
belt,
God.
and she had a
Wow.
lot of stories. Exactly. So she has just finished. She's just completed her 50th country, 50.
Oh my God,
And
amazing.
that's like crazy awesome. So when we started it in 2000, a lot of stories that she could contribute to the blog. And then we thought, okay, we'll just start writing about one country at a time. And slowly we started realizing that, okay, so it's not just the three of us who's reading our blog. There are more people outside who's actually commenting, following our blogs and telling us what they would like to hear more and listen to us talk about. So that was pretty exciting, at least for me, to see that there were more people interested in what we were doing. Exactly. And this was the first time we were doing all this. So we slowly set up our social media pages. We started getting in touch with other travel bloggers, started building a community amongst ourselves. And, and then we were invited to trips and farms and things like that where we met other folks. And so slowly that's how we got into blogging. Yeah.
Wow.
Awesome. So we have a customary tradition with the Musafir Stories where each week whenever we speak to our guest bloggers, we request them to take us and our listeners on a journey to a new destination in India and share all their experiences with us. So having that in mind, what place have you guys chosen to take our listeners to?
Okay, so we have decided that we want to talk about a trip to Himachal, which we did recently to Malana, Kasol, and Manali. And I found that interesting because, it was living in the city Bangalore. I'm sure you guys know, the Bangalore traffic, the crowds, when you make that trip outside where you actually don't see that many cars and it's just, blue skies and trees all over, it just gives you that perfect break that you were looking for. And that's exactly what, I felt when we did Kasol, Malana and Manali because, it was absolutely beautiful. It was completely green. You could actually feel the fresh air and the Parvati river flowing, kind of stuff that you never hear in the cities. So that's the trip that we've decided that we want to talk about.
Wow, that's amazing. Because I actually understand that feeling. You will not believe it. Maybe it's like a really small example, but even traveling to a nice road and seeing the greenery makes me so happy.
It's something of a rarity right now, especially when you're living in the city because it's just a concrete jungle. So when you actually get out, and when I mean out, like really out of the city, that's when you get the feeling that you're actually one with nature right now.
That's so true. And wow, the destination is amazing.
And then just for people who are wondering what Nice Road is, that Faiza mentioned, Nice Road is one of the highways on the outskirts, or I don't even know if you could say that it's the outskirts of Bangalore anymore because it's almost become a part of Bangalore now. But anyway, moving on. How did you guys discover this place, Nandhini? Did you have any references or did you look this up on the internet? How did you discover Malana and Kasol?
Yeah, so Manali, it's not my first time to Manali. I had done Manali a couple of years ago. I mean, like about 8 years ago when I was back in college and, you're on an extremely tight budget and, you are in that let's cover more number of places and stay in extremely budget hostels to sort of, be pocket friendly. And I decided that, I wanted to go to Himachal again. So we picked Manali and basically I flew in from Bangalore to Delhi. And then from Delhi to Manali, we took an overnight bus, so about 16 hours. We did about 3 days in Manali. We stayed at hostel, which is an amazing hostel. It's located in a very beautiful place in Manali. It was my first time. I tried it, and great house and wonderful rooms and located in a very nice place in Manali. So definite thumbs up for the place. Wow. So we stayed there. And Manali is completely chill. It's there's nothing. It's a very serene place, nice valley. You can go around. There's a couple of very nice eat outs. You can go to a couple of temples, hiking spots. It was quite a relaxing 2 days in Manali, post which we took a we rented a car and then we went to Kasol.
Nandini, if I can interrupt you there, I went to Kasol and I was really taken aback because it is known as a mini Israel of India. So there are a lot of Hebrew food and a lot of Hebrew-ness that you see in that tiny little village over there. Everybody speaks. I just couldn't believe that it was in India because there were a lot of people speaking a lot of foreign languages, very few locals, and even the locals that I met, even though we stayed in a good hotel, the locals that we met were all, still surviving on finding these different stuff from the forests and medicinal value, and then they would try and sell it outside of Kasol, and very, very. It was such a culture shock that I had in Kasol.
That's interesting.
Yeah, versus what Nandini is going to tell now, that's even major. But yeah, so Kasol was also interesting.
And around what time of the year did you guys travel?
I did in September.
Okay.
So it's a good season to go. It's not too cold and it's not too warm, so it's very pleasant during the day. And touch wood, we didn't have any rains. And it's perfect. As in, the weather was absolutely wonderful. So Kasol is again, it's one of the, like I said, when you go connect with nature, especially when you're doing the outskirts of the cities, there's, you just get lost in the nature. You could just take a book and then you could just sit by the river and, hours could go by and you would not complain. You don't feel that, there's no network or there's, oh my God, how am I going to check my emails or WhatsApp or social media? Because it's just, you're just lost in the moment over there, which is the thing that I really loved about Himachal Pradesh. I mean, I have to tell you, the network was bad in Kasol. I mean, we rarely had any internet connectivity in a lot of places, but it's something that I never missed, which is constant complaint when I'm living in the city about call drops and, not having 3G here or 2G there. But somehow when you're in that beautiful place, it didn't bother us at all that, there was no network anywhere. We were just really, really loving the moment over there.
That's perfect. Y'all exactly disconnected to connect to the nature. So
you can need that. You can need that social break, where you're just out there and enjoying yourself and, sort of, re-energizing yourself to get back into a regular city life. So I think
absolutely.
And so we did another 2-3 days in Kasol. We checked out a couple of cafes there, like Shilpa had mentioned, and then we hit Tosh, which is also another village that's quite close to Kasol, about a 2-hour drive.
Okay.
And then this place called Malana. Malana is a place that I had heard a couple of years ago when I was living in Europe, and I had done Amsterdam because Malana is very famous for its Malana cream, which is a variant of cannabis called Malana cream. And, we were just interested because, it's apparently one of the most expensive hash in the world, and I wanted to know where it comes from. And it was about just a 2-hour drive from Kasol. So we figured, let's go there. And I heard stories about this Malana village, about it being an Aryan village, and a lot of rumors. So we figured, let's just take the car and let's just go there. And it's about a 2-hour drive from Kasol. And then from there, it's another 2.5-hour trek to go up to that village. I had heard stories about Malana where, the locals don't touch you because they believe that they are Aryan descents or descents from, some of them say that they're descendants from Alexander the Great, that when he came to conquer, he set up camp over there. So, they're descendants of him. Some people say they have other connects and, so generally the people there consider themselves to be unique. So they don't really like mingling with the outside world, and they definitely don't like making contact with outside people. So when we actually landed up going to the village, it was actually true because you have boards over there which says if you touch the temple walls, you have to pay a fine of 5,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees. And the people barely make eye contact with you. They would look at you as, oh my God, you are strangers. So, you could feel that, oh my God, what are you doing in our space kind of vibes. And that was very interesting. And we also got to witness this really bizarre but absolutely mind-blowing thing about how they serve justice over there. So it's actually called goat justice or whatever you call. So when two people over there actually have a problem and you're accusing the other person, instead of law and court and what we have in Indian judicial system, they take 2 goats. Each person gets a goat, and then the hind legs, there's a small slit that's made, and then it's they induce poison there. And the goat which dies the earliest, that person is considered guilty, and he pays the penalty for the crime.
Oh my
And
God, okay.
that's how
That is quite
we
interesting.
actually got to see this live over there.
Oh wow.
And they don't like to entertain outside justice systems. Like, if you try and call a cop from the outside, you actually have to pay to get the cop in.
No.
So so their village panchayat is supreme,
Quite
and that's
different,
all.
yeah.
And that is so that I found is very, very different. And on a side note, it's also one of the most dirtiest villages I've ever seen. For a village, I must tell you that it's absolutely filthy.
Oh my
And
God, okay.
it is very heartbreaking because you would imagine that some place that's sitting high up in the Parvati Valley would be extremely serene and beautiful and clean, but apparently not. So a lot of the people, they lack the civic sense. They aren't very well educated. So, they have their own sets of problems. There's
Right.
a lot of drug addictions and alcoholism that's quite rampant over there. But nonetheless, the view there and the trek to go up there really makes it worth it to go and see this beautiful place.
Right.
But yes, the village as such, the insides could definitely use some sort of,
A little
cleaning
help.
up. So it was definitely, I had a lot of stories and tales to take back from Malana. So I would definitely recommend it for people who are, up for like doing something new, because, it's something that's out of the way and something that's very different from what you usually see or hear.
That's also
And
because it sounds so different. As even the example, the goat justice, what you just mentioned, it's so interesting. Trust me, I've never ever heard of anything like this.
And you would think that it's the 21st century, so sometimes those old practices just die out. Yeah, so that was very good.
Yeah. And what about lodging? Do you have any place where you can stay in?
So what we did was we went in the morning and we trekked up, and then we came back down by afternoon, and then we again drove back to Kasol.
Okay.
There are stay options in Malana, but we kind of preferred. We already had an Airbnb in Kasol. It's called the Parvati Valley. And it's just right by the river. It was a campsite. So we stayed in tents, which made it all the more interesting. So we came back. So we didn't stay in Malana. But yeah, if you did want to stay there are some options to stay inside that village, but we preferred going solo.
Okay. And in terms of the itinerary, how many days are we talking about here, Nandhini?
So,
inclusive of Manali, Kasol, and Malana, how long of a trip was this?
So it was about 3 days in Manali, 3 days in Kasol, and a half day in Malana. So I would call that a week.
Okay. And then you said about the lodging that Zostel was something you did rely on while in Kasol, and Malana you didn't really stay there, right, to lodge?
So the lodging was Zostel in Manali and Parvati Valley Airbnb in Kasol.
Okay. And just moving on with the interview, you did mention that you stayed for about 3 days in Kasol. So what are some of the other activities that one can do, or places one can expect to see while in Kasol?
When you're in Kasol, Kasol, when you stay there, you can visit Tosh, which is another beautiful village that's nearby. It's got a very nice viewpoint. There are a lot of cafes over there, and there are a lot of temples. And along the Parvati River, there are a lot of hiking spots which you can go. And essentially, there's a plethora of food over there. So essentially, it's like a food lover's paradise, because you can go for all these nature walks and then come back and then belt some good Israeli food. So 3 days just goes away in a jiffy.
I was just about to ask you the same thing. What are the food options? Like, what was one of the best thing that you ate there?
Yeah, maybe Shilpa can, tell her food experience there.
Yeah, Shilpa, please.
I remember eating a lot because I grew up in the Middle East and I saw like a lot of Arab food over there. So I remember getting kind of excited because of all of that. So yeah, definitely shawarma was there, but then you get that everywhere else. And and there are a lot of obviously Indian food as well, but it's the different Israeli food that you need to go and try there,
Yeah, because food and shopping is one thing that at least I keep Googling, and that if I'm choosing a destination, food and shopping is one thing that I check out first.
Shopping is great in Manali, as a heads up. If you like shopping, then Manali has got a lot of this, Himachali stalls, and, there is a lot of pashmina stalls. I don't know how, but there are a lot of pashmina that you can buy. And a lot of my friends went crazy shopping in Manali. So if you're up for all this hippie, harem pants and bags and generally junk souvenir that you like to take back home, then Manali is definitely a place to go shopping.
Awesome.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit more about the people. You did touch upon the little bit of a culture shock you had in both places, but from an outsider's perspective about Kasol and about Malana, how different are the cultures there?
So the thing is, you can't really compare Kasol and Malana because for the reason that they're both in Himachal Pradesh, but of course they're two different kind of people. Mm-hmm. So and the people in Malana, they actually speak a different language from the other people in the Parvati Valley. They speak something called Kanashi, which is their local language. So it's kind of funny that if you are outside from that valley, you really can't communicate with the people living there. So culturally, there are two different set of people. They have their own, way they get married, their own way in which they live, the different language that they speak. So essentially, they're completely, there's no intersection between the two.
So, and even you guys take a guide or anything? So how did you go ahead to that village and how did you explore it? Did you have a guide along with you all?
We had a person who we rented a car with in Kasol. He drove us till the starting point where you start the trek, and then post that we were on our own. There was a place where you could go to get some food inside that village, and that lady was relatively friendly and could speak a little bit of Hindi. Uh-huh. So we did manage to get a word or two in her, but otherwise, I mean, with the vibes and the buildings and the things that were written on it, it was fairly clear as to what to expect and what to do and what not to do. So there was no, there was no surprises over there. Of course, it was a shock, but the surprises were pretty clear.
Okay.
Right. So I'm assuming not a lot of contact or exchange with the locals there, right? In Malana?
Oh, no, definitely not. So this is just a funny story. When you're actually reaching the entrance of the village, there was a waterfall and it was quite slippery. So I was about to sort of, lose my balance, and my friends were a couple of steps behind me. So I wanted to grab onto someone or something who was nearby. And there was the local who was standing near me. And when I tried to grab him, he actually started swaying away, because he was afraid that I would actually touch him. So I got the intro to the village pretty much at the start itself. So it's pretty funny though.
But Kasol was kind of different because it's a very, very small village. You can just walk around it in like 10 minutes and then that's it. The rest of it is all woods and, places for hikes and treks and things like that. So we actually stayed at a place and there was this guy who used to come to that place. I don't know, I guess they were friends or something. So we just asked him. So he was a local there. We just asked him, can you just take us around the woods, the forest? Can you just show us, where you go for a walk, where you live, where you stay, what do you do, sort of thing. And they were quite friendly. So he and his son, both of them came with us. They took us around the whole walk around the Parvati River, took us to this house, showed us their apple orchards and showed us all these different mushrooms which were growing and showed us all the different leaves, which he was like, if you smash it and drink it with water, then you will not be able to move your legs for 3 days and, all these different kinds of stuff. Yeah, and they knew what each plant over there was for. He was like, if you have a heart attack, if you have a heart pain, there's no need to go to a doctor. There's no surgery, nothing. We treat ourselves, with these leaves, with nature. You just have to have this particular fruit. You just have to have this particular stuff and then you will be cured. And so they're very strong with nature that way. So we saw that during the walk at Kasol.
Wow, that's amazing.
And in terms of the language, Shilpa, I'm assuming Hindi should be able to get you around in Kasol, right?
So yeah, Hindi should be able to get you around Kasol. It's actually Himachali. And at that point, I was working in Himachal Pradesh, so we could understand a little bit of Himachali as well. But Hindi is what we speak, so they could understand that. So that was not a concern at all in Kasol.
Awesome. And what about any interaction with the local Israelis, if I may say, any of that experience, Shilpa?
No, unfortunately, they were just too hippie for my taste. But we did see quite a lot of them, and they were the ones who suggested the food on what to eat in their restaurant and stuff, but no interaction beyond that stage, no.
So I got to interact with some people in Manali, because Manali is extremely cosmopolitan. You meet people from all over the world who come there. It's not just Israelis, so you have a lot of African musicians, a lot of reggae people. People who are interested into budding musicians, actually, they come to Manali to perform in a lot of the cafes over there. So, you can actually interact with a lot of international budding students who want to turn into musicians over there. So that was very interesting in Manali.
Awesome. So both of you didn't have a chance to crash any of their parties, I'm assuming.
No.
But we get to enjoy some really good music. So in that sense, I love 70s rock, and I really love the music scene in Manali. It was absolutely cool.
Awesome. Is there more to cover in any of these two destinations, Shilpa and Nandhini, before we move on with the interview?
I just want to say, because we are talking about Himachali destinations, it's not just these two places. There are tons of these small places and villages that you can go to in Himachal, and each place is so very different. And Himachal, as it is extremely, extremely beautiful. And yeah, if somebody is staying in Chandigarh, then their weekends should all be in Himachal to all these different small places that we see.
So if I had to ask each one of you of any memorable stories or experiences that you'd like to share.
I think Shilpa has a wonderful story.
So it didn't happen in India, but I think it was one of my first trips outside of India on my own, and I went to Spain. And I just landed at the airport. I was waiting for my friends to come who were supposed to land like 3 hours later or something. And I got a phone call. I was just talking on the phone. My bags were by my side. And by the time I finished the call and I just turned around to pick something, somebody had stolen my bag. It had my passport, it had my phone, it had my itinerary, my hotel address, every single thing, imagine. And that was my first trip, and I just didn't know what to do. Obviously, as usual, I called up my parents and I cried. I was like, oh my God. So what do I do, sort of thing? And then I went to the police station, which is there at the airport. And so the economy of Spain back in 2011-12 was really, really bad. There had a lot of unemployment and things. So the police was hardly surprised. They were like, okay, so you should have been careful. And they gave me, the phone numbers of all the credit cards companies that I had so that I could call them up and cancel my card. And there was a CCTV camera right there, but they just refused to even look at the footage because apparently you need a court order to look at the footage. And I just filed an FIR and I came back, and the police was just not helpful. And my dad told me the Indian embassy address, and I just had enough money in my pocket to just take a train and go to the embassy. And thankfully, the Indian embassy apparently had seen a lot of situations like this, and I was not the first one. And they just gave me my passport back in 2 hours.
Oh, thank God.
So I know exactly. But in that 2 or 3 hours, my first three hours in Spain, I did not even have a local SIM card because obviously I didn't get a chance to buy the SIM card. So I was using my international roaming on Airtel. And in that 3 hours, I racked up enough bill, which was around 30,000 rupees by calling my parents, by calling embassy, by calling the police.
Oh my God.
I know. As soon as I got my passport, my phone got disconnected because I had all these bills racked up and, things like that. So that was really, really memorable. Yeah, I mean, forgettable. I wouldn't say memorable, but something which I would like to forget.
But thankfully, at least the embassy folks were more efficient in this case than the police, right?
Yes. I was just surprised because apparently they see a lot of such things. So it was not new to them at all. And in 2 hours, they gave me my passport, which I never thought would happen, So
awesome. So getting back closer to home now, if I just had to ask you guys to shut your eyes and think of one place that comes to mind when you think of Kasol, what would that be?
It's Tosh. And there's this particular instance that I remember. So there's this cafe called the Pink Floyd Cafe in Tosh, which I personally thought was because, me loving 70s rock and everything, I was absolutely psyched just by the name because I actually thought that they would play Pink Floyd covers in the cafe. Of course, to my disappointment, they didn't play a couple of tracks, but it's not exactly dedicated to Pink Floyd. Nonetheless, the cafe is located just, you can oversee the valley from where the cafe is located. It's really high up. So, if you just sit back, you get an entire view of the Kasol Valley, and it is just mind-blowing. As in, we sat there for 5 hours, and I honestly didn't know that, it was actually that long. So that's my highlight from Kasol. I mean, I would recommend that spot for anybody because you get beautiful pictures.
Wow, perfect.
That's awesome. And you, Shilpa?
So we stayed at this really, I don't even remember the name of the hotel, but it was a tree house in Kasol. So what happened was the place that we booked, the cheaper place that we booked, we kind of lost our way and it was inside, I don't know, some forest and we had to hike to get there. And towards the end, we just lost our patience and we saw this tree house over there and we were like, okay, it looks empty. Why don't we just go there? So we went there and fortunately they had no guests scheduled for that day and they gave it to us. And yeah, so I just remembered that part of it. So not everything that it happens as per your itinerary. If you just open, there's so many different things that could happen. You don't plan for it, but then that ends up to be a little bit more enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that does sound like a nice stay you had in that treehouse.
I did have a good stay there. Yeah.
Awesome. And any final bit of advice to our aspiring travelers, say traveling as female travelers? Any tips on that, especially to some destinations in some countries?
Okay. On that note, especially when it comes to solo travel, okay. Personally, I believe that it's not gender specific. I think as a traveler, it doesn't matter if you're male or female. You still have to be careful. Generally, don't walk into unknown places at night or, in general, the usual stuff that people always tell you. If strangers offer you food, then, you be wary of it. And in general, be very aware of your surroundings. Like, especially if you're walking alone at night, then preferably don't wear your earphones so that you at least know who's walking behind you or, walking in front of you, things like that. But otherwise, as such, I always tell my friends from Europe as well that India is a perfectly safe tourist destination. Of course, we've got these incidences that you always hear in the news and things like that. But as a whole, after having traveled a lot in India, I can safely say that nothing's ever happened. And if you're careful, I think as a tourist destination, I've always found India perfectly safe.
Excellent. It has been an awesome journey so far. You've got us all excited telling us about your stories and your travel experiences. Tell us a little bit more about what's planned next. You did mention that you usually plan at least one trip together each year. So what's on the horizons this time?
We were just talking about, we were thinking of doing Israel.
Wow.
Israel, yeah. So we were just checking the ticket prices and going there before it's too hot, before summer and things like that. So so we haven't spoken to Roomi about it yet, but let's see if she can join in. But then, yeah, definitely Israel.
That's excellent. What's the best way to reach you? I know you have a lot of us excited now telling us about your travel stories and what's coming up as well. So how can our listeners keep in touch with your travel stories and follow you guys on social media?
Obviously, it's our blog, chasingsunsets.com. We are pretty active on Instagram. Roomi handles Instagram handle quite well, and the handle is Chasing Sunsets, the blog. Also Facebook and Twitter, just like everybody else. So anybody can get in touch with us, even through email, chasingsunsetstheblog@gmail.com.
Okay, and just as a heads up to all our listeners, we will have all these links in the show notes section of this podcast. So even if you haven't noted it down, it's fine. It'll be there in the show notes section. Thank you so much. It's been an excellent journey, and thank you for being excellent guides to all of us and all our listeners and taking us on this beautiful journey to Kasol, Manali, and Malana, and telling us all your beautiful stories, what one can expect, and also some of the surprises that you guys came across. Thank you so much, and it's been one of a kind for us because it's the first time we have two guests from two different locations dialing in, so it's been technically a little bit of a challenge, but thank you so much for making this work.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. The pleasure was ours.
Yes.
I know. Thank you so much for having us.
That was yet another great episode of the Musafir Stories. If you guys like the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Audioboom, Stitcher, Pocket Radio, or any other podcasting app that's available on iOS or Android. You could also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We go by the handle The Musafir Stories. Or, if it suits you, you could email us at themusafirstories@gmail.com and visit our website www.themusafirstories.com for more information. All of these links will be made available in the show notes section of the podcast. So here's to more traveling, sharing, and inspiring. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, happy travels and goodbye.